One summer night when I was around 5 years old, my sister and I awoke to hear something through our open bedroom window. My parents were yelling loudly on the back patio. This was not a common occurrence, and when they did fight, it was not typically anywhere that there is a chance of us hearing. But this sort of thing did happen from time to time. And though the situation was mildly unusual, we shrugged it off, shut the window, and went back to sleep. We promptly forgot about the ordeal. It wasn't until years later we learned the truth about the yelling. As a near adult, I overheard my mother explaining the situation to a family member in another room. I'm a little fuzzy in the details as this all occurred a long time ago, but this is the gist of it. Apparently, at some point in the night, after my sister and I went to bed, my parents received an unusual phone call from someone using an electronic interpreter. Basically the same type of technology a person who is deaf might use to make calls and communicate over the phone. Understandably, my parents were a little surprised because we didn't know anyone who would use this service to contact us. But either way, they had accepted the phone call. I'm not sure how the person on the other line introduced themselves, or if they even did at all, but they knew the full names of everyone in my family, which was immediately very creepy and alarming. The conversation began to escalate as the person on the other end of the phone very specifically explained what our house looked like, and told my parents that they were hiding somewhere in our backyard, which was large, dark, and full of all kinds of plants and trees that made it hard to clearly see. There were too many places to look, and at this point, the tormentor made it clear that they had intentions of entering our home and dismembering my sister and I. At this point, understandably, they were beginning to become frantic. There was a chance that nobody was out there and that this was all just some kind of cruel joke. But that notion was not worth the risk of believing. My dad asked if they were really where they said they were, and what were my parents doing at that very moment, and what were they wearing and stuff like that. This infection of a human on the other end of the line explained exactly what my father was doing, which was waving his middle finger in the air. Exactly what they were wearing, where certain things on our patio were placed. The expression on my mom's face, every detail. My dad, a rough guy with a heart of gold, charged into the night, ready to kill any person he encountered. Neither of my parents had cell phones. I don't think they were even a thing at this time. So my mom took the phone, which had finally been put down by my dad, and called the police. As brave and stupid as my dad was for venturing into the dark that night, he found nothing, and when the cops showed up soon after, they found nothing too. The police were not able to trace the call because of the electronic interpreter, which they said was a common device used by people trying to anonymously harass others over the phone. Nothing ever came of this incident, and as I said, I was not told about it until at least a decade after it had happened. Was this the work of a former friend or enemy trying to play some kind of cruel joke? Was there an actual threat in my backyard? We will never know. This happened this past May. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. The complex has no security guards whatsoever with one other roommate. We'll call the roommate Emily. It's also important to know that a lot of people will ask Emily if we're twins. We look very similar. She and I both spend almost every night at our boyfriend's house and are rarely home. One night around 8:45 p.m., I was home cleaning before I left to go to my boyfriend's house. I ran to get something from my car and came back into my apartment, locking the door behind me. 5 minutes after, I hear a knock at my door. I'm already a paranoid person, so I get a little scared. I knew that it wasn't Emily because she would have called to tell me she forgot her key. I tried to ignore it, and then a second knock. These also weren't innocent knocks. They sounded like a police officer knock. Immediately after the second knock, I FaceTimed my boyfriend. He's convincing me to take a look through the people. I take a look and no one is there. I say, okay, I'm going to pack my stuff and then come over. I take 2 steps back from the people, and then again, I hear banging on the door. Even my boyfriend's face dropped on the phone. I ran and locked myself in the bathroom crying. I didn't get out of there until my boyfriend got there to get me. And when he did, no one was at my door. The next day, my boyfriend and I stopped at my apartment so I could change and get ready for a Cinco de Mayo gathering. There were no knocks that day. The day after I got home, Emily was out getting kitty litter and was going to meet me at the apartment since we were both too scared to be there alone. I get home and I was sitting on my phone scrolling through TikTok. About 10 minutes into the scrolling, I hear that same knock. I look through my people and call Emily and describe to her what the guy looked like. She had no idea who it could be. I then watched him walk away and thought maybe that he would stop. Another 5 minutes passed and he was back knocking. I FaceTime Emily again and she tells me to open the door. Don't ever do this. I opened the door and the guy was a bit muscular, looked a little bit older than me, I'm 23, and was someone who I had never seen around my apartment complex before. He seemed shook that I answered. The conversation was, "Oh, is this a bad time?" "Yes." "I was just wondering, do you have a printer?" "No." "Oh, okay." And then he walked away slowly. I also thought it was weird that someone was asking for a printer, being that all classes were moved to online format, and we were supposed to be in quarantine. And also, if you needed a printer that bad and someone doesn't answer the first knock, why would you keep trying? Especially when you don't even know the person. We told a bunch of people about the knocking in our complex, and one other apartment said that they had been having the same issues. They were also 2 girls living alone. The next day came and Emily went back with her boyfriend. As she was leaving the apartment, she heard from a balcony next to ours. "Yo, is that her?" She turned around and 2 men ran back inside. We told the apartment complex and called the police. They said they can't really do anything unless the guy is present at our door knocking. After that, we installed a motion detection camera and put up a sign on our window. "We have cameras and you're being recorded." Since then, Emily has moved out. I have 2 new male roommates who are seen coming in and out of the apartment, and no one has came and knocked since. This story happened when I was 15 and totally reckless. I was with my best friend Alice and her neighbor Emily. We decided to try and enter clubs with our fake IDs after discreetly going out of the house by the window. After getting rejected by the security guards at the clubs because obviously we were not looking like 18-plus girls, we were wandering the streets not knowing what to do. It was around 1 a.m. and the subway was closed, and we didn't have enough money to get a cab. Plus, we really wanted to party, and Alice wanted to find a new guy because she was heartbroken from her past boyfriend. The last club we tried to enter into was in one of the areas that had a famous bad reputation in the city. It was in Lyon, France. Suddenly, a car stops next to us. The door opens and there are 3 guys inside. 2 of them turn their head and tell us, "Hey, pretty girls, come with us. We have everything you need to get some pleasure. We have some drinks and we can smoke, come." The one at the back looked really muscular and was really insistent. Alice then said, "Let's go, girls, it could be super fun." Then she whispered, "Please, I need some fun, I need a guy to turn the page." She grabbed Emily's arm and went into the car laughing. At this point, I was like, what the heck am I doing? I would rather die with my friends than die alone in the streets, and we all entered the car. In the car, they're trying to flirt with us, but I'm petrified. We say that we're 17 and they tell us that it's the perfect age to party with them. After 15 minutes of them driving to I don't know where around the city, they say that they want to get some drinks and that they want to find a cool place. Alice is super happy. Emily and I are relieved that they're going to drop us in a public place like a bar or a club, but they park the car in a car park in the middle of nowhere. They get out of the car and the guys take some bottles from the trunk, mix a lot of stuff inside the glasses and then give them to us. The one who was driving stays in the car, hands on the wheel, not saying anything. The two other guys start to tell us really inappropriate things, and that they're going to take us to a hotel and that we all looked like we had experience. They were around 35 and we were all 15. They insisted on saying how they would be the best hit of our lives, how they would be in beds, etc. Emily whispers to me that we shouldn't drink, but act as if we're all drinking because there might be something inside of it. Alice starts flirting back and tells them that it's kind of dangerous, but she likes it. At this point, they tell that they're never going to let us go unless we stay with them the whole night. I feel trapped and they ask me to drink insistently. I finally do it and I start to feel dizzy really fast. Everything is blurry around me. I think in a very incoherent way and my stomach hurts. The guys are looking at me as if I was a prey and they were hunting. About 10 to 15 minutes of feeling like this, I tell Alice that we should go and she doesn't look worried at all. I then think that I should sit inside the car, waiting for my fate to do its job. I open the front door and there's still the guy who drove inside. He is listening to the radio and doesn't even look at me when I enter. I asked him, "Why aren't you with your friends?" He turns to me upset and says, "Hey, I don't know who you are and I don't want to know. You told us you were 17, but you look like my younger sister and she just got into high school. I don't know why my stupid friends are stupidly flirting with you, but I'm just waiting for them to stop and drop the three of you in a public place. Once it'll be done, I hope I'll never have to see you again in my entire life." I was shocked and relieved. We stayed there, the both of us, just listening to the radio and hearing the laughs of Alice to the bad sexual jokes of the muscular guy. I was so dizzy, I was melting into my seat. After maybe 30 minutes, the driver said he wanted to go somewhere, and everybody got into the car. We sat in there and went for about a 10-minute ride, while the two guys were saying what they would do to us once we got to the hotel. The driving guy told them to shut up, and that he was dropping us off in a big place with lots of people. We gave the two guys some fake names for Facebook, some fake phone numbers, and we finally got out of the car. The muscular guy who was in the back tried to grab Emily's arm, but she managed to run outside and get away. They left. The driver looked at me just before and he nodded at me. I was still super dizzy and eventually I threw everything up that I had consumed. Emily didn't believe what had just happened, and Alice was still laughing, saying that was insane. It was like 3:30 or 4 in the morning, and we finally found a real party after that. But to these two guys that wanted to do I don't know what in a hotel, I'm glad that night didn't continue. Or, like the driving guy said, I hope I'll never ever see you again in my entire life. I live in a small town. You blink and you miss it. The best that we can boast about is a single stop sign and a gas station, which we only have because of the nearby highway. Any actual semblance of a town is 25 minutes away. So when things get scary out here, it's amplified. The occasional homeless person is no big deal. They're often just drifting on through. Addicts run rampant and will steal everything they can from your house, but it's the norm out here. However, what happened a few years ago certainly was not normal. Originally, I was dead asleep in my bed. I only woke up because it was burning hot in my room, but it was summertime and there wasn't much that I could do. I just remember tossing and turning until I got a creepy feeling that fell into the pit of my stomach. I glanced over to the bathroom door that was open with the light on. Everything was normal. I left the light on so I wouldn't trip and die if I had to pee in the middle of the night. Next, I glanced at the window directly across from my bed. I had no curtains, but I did have a crappy set of blinds. Part of the blinds were broken from wear and tear, and the crappy AC output beneath it would make them move back and forth, so you would get a glimpse of the outside every so often. The backyard light was still going, but what made me stop was the outline of my window. The figure of someone was directly at my window, almost like it was waiting for the blinds to move to watch me. I didn't have an imagination as a child. That had been trained right out of me. But the sight was enough to pour every horror film into my head at that moment. I squeezed my eyes shut and pulled my blankets over my head and slept in a cloth oven that night. By morning time, the figure was gone. I remember running to my mom's room on the verge of tears in the morning, telling her what had happened. She had laughed at me like I was an idiot, and told me that it was probably just a stray cat that had climbed up there for one odd reason or another. I had almost believed her since my window was pretty high off the ground, but something didn't sit right. Later that day when we were doing yard work, I glanced over at my window and saw one of our metal patio chairs had been pushed up to it. I pointed it out to my mom, who proceeded to chew me out. "That's how the cat probably got up there. Stop leaving furniture everywhere." But I haven't moved it. It was heavy enough that I struggled with it, so we moved it back, and so began a pattern. At night, I would see the figure, complain to my mom, and we would find a chair moved back every single morning. This went on for a few weeks. My mother stopped caring about my concerns until one morning we saw where the outside screen of my window had been sliced open. I still remember shaking her head and complaining about those dang stray cats that we had still yet to see. I could tell that she was unnerved by that development. I couldn't handle it anymore, and I opted to sleep in our living room that night. The only problem was our kitchen and living room connected, which meant there were always several windows. The first night of my move went well, despite my back hurting from sleeping on the couch. I avoided my room like the plague. It wasn't until about 4 days later that we ran into an issue. I woke up and glanced at the clock above the fireplace. It read a little past 3 a.m. I couldn't realize why I had woken up until it had happened again. There was a beam of light shining in from the kitchen window, almost like someone was shining a flashlight in. I saw it trace along the walls and land on the love seat across from the couch that I was on. I was mortified. When I told my mom, she continued to laugh at me. I gave in and decided that I would sleep in my dad's room, even though it had a gigantic window. He slept in the recliner with a huge TV, so I felt more safe having someone around. The yard light was directly outside of the window anyways, and it seemed foolproof. That was until I woke up out of habitual fear and watched through the window across from the bed. Everything seemed normal as time drug on, and I felt like an idiot. Maybe my mom was right. That was until I saw a lone figure come out of the woods by the backyard shed, walk directly onto the light, and head to the patio furniture like he had been there plenty of times before. I still remember the large build that the man had, and the confidence like he was the one who lived here, and wasn't creeping around in my yard in the dead of night. I just remember listening to the TV until I fell asleep again, hoping to get another glimpse. My dad would have been mad if I had woken him up. He was grumpy on a good day and terrified on a bad day. I didn't feel like risking it unless I had solid proof because I was scared. The next morning, my mom chewed me out again for the patio furniture, which was routine almost a month later. But this time, something new had happened. She demanded that I stop playing in the toolboxes of the garage. A bunch of tools had been taken out and left on her doorstep. Screwdrivers, a large hammer, flashlights, etc. It wasn't me. I begged with my mom and pleaded with her, just to stay up with me one night. We couldn't close our garage because it was an open carport, and I wasn't going to get my butt beaten for touching tools because of someone else. It was driving me mad, and she finally agreed. That night, we would stay awake in the living room. I finally fell asleep before my mom did, but I remember her waking me up in a panic. She pointed to the window that overlooked into our garage. We could see the top of someone's head as they walked back and forth. There was the sound of someone placing metal tools down on the brick slabs, as if they were trying to be quiet but couldn't fully muffle it. She whispered for me to go wake my dad. My dad was angry, having been woken up in the middle of the night by his frantic daughter. He grabbed his pistol and headed out from the back door, towards the front of the house where the garage was located. We heard my dad screaming, and someone dropping tools, and then the shot of a gun twice. The frantic footsteps pounding out of the garage felt like they were coming from my chest. My mom peeked out of the window and then opened the door, and my dad stumbled in. He had missed both shots because of his unstable aim, but told us that there was a man crouching at our front door looking at our door handle. None of us slept that night, and in the morning, the law from the closest town had arrived. They didn't do much besides ask if anything had been stolen, for a description of the man, and then told us to install cameras. That was it. They said the guy was probably just looking for something easy to steal for quick money. If that had been the case, why hadn't he stolen the tools, the generator, the welder, or broken into any of the vehicles in the garage? We finally set up some hunting trail cams around the house, but nothing has happened since. Coming home from college for holidays, I still have nightmares about the incidents years later when I sleep in my own bed. I don't know what he was looking for or why he did the things that he did. Whatever the case may be, I hope we never see him again.